When we read the word that I just read in the beginning of this reflection about being chosen, about being predestined, see, a lot of people get a little confused about that, about predestined, because we don't seem to have been predestined, but we have. And St. Paul gives us a very good presentation of being predestined, being chosen, being set apart, and how God will forgive us in a very extraordinary way, how God will separate us even from our guilt. And this is something extraordinary, something we have to understand, that the condition to keep this grace and to live up to being predestined by God is our faithfulness, our obedience. Begins with obedience to the church, regardless, because we need to know, when we say church, Catholic Church, we're talking about Jesus. Jesus is the head of the church. So when we talk about obedience to the church, we are not talking about only obedience to church human hierarchy. We are talking about obedience to the head of the church, that is Jesus. So even if the priest, the bishop, the pope are upside down, are standing on their heads, doesn't matter, because we are in obedience to the head of the church, that is Jesus. So church should sound in our hearts as Jesus, nothing else. Church is Jesus. So we come to our understanding of this journey, and this journey teaches us that the church is our vessel of salvation through these murky waters of this exile, and we should jump on it and navigate in it and be part of this journey, bringing souls into this vessel of salvation that is the church. See, we understand that God has made us fishermen of men, and this is what he told the apostles when he picked them one by one, by hands, as they say, and he picked us too. That's why we're talking about being predestined. That means being chosen. God picked us one by one, by name, and this is extraordinary. If we only knew what we are talking about here, we will be filled with joy, because then we know who we are. And who can separate us from the love of God, as St. Paul says. And a lot of people, being Christians and being part of this predestined people of God, still their faith is so weak. They are sitting there in the little home, worry about everything and concerned about everything, and following all kind of absurd conspiracies and ridiculous things. So we need to understand that if we are really understanding the love of God and what God has done for us and how God has predestined us, why should we be afraid? Why should we have any worries about life? Why? Because we have no faith, because we don't understand who we are. See, that's why you are afraid. That's why you are concerned, thinking they're going to mark you with the beast mark, thinking all this nonsensical stuff, when the gospel says not even poison will do harm to you if you are faithful. So if you are afraid and you are sitting there in your little sofa worry about what the Masons are doing, then what you are is you are a faithless person. You don't know Christ. You have no idea who you are. Because if you were a person of Christ, you wouldn't be worried, hiding, stuck where you are. No, you will be a brave soldier, facing the music with no fear, facing life, not worry about what the evil one is doing and his army. Who cares about what they're planning, what they do? And they can't touch us. And no one can separate us from the love of God, as St. Paul says. So be brave and dare to be free. Dare not to worry. Dare not to give power to the powers of darkness. You know, when you are hiding from the powers of darkness, being so careful, making sure you don't do this, you don't do that, because that belongs to the Masons, that belongs to the one world order, and who knows how much information there are. Then you are a slave. You are a slave of your own information. I tell you, when you are free, when you are living up to your predestination, you don't have those worries, because Satan cannot touch you. So why would you worry about what people are trying to do to the people of God? No, you wouldn't be worried, because you know God has chosen you, predestined you, and you are protected. So what? You just go on with your life and fight it with courageousness. Be brave. Don't be a coward, you know. So we have to understand this. The moment you sit at home afraid of what the world is doing to the people of God, you are just a coward. That's what you are. Because brave soldiers are not concerned about that. Imagine if you go into the battle and you are afraid of the weapons of your enemy, then you are a loser. You're not a trustworthy soldier. You are just a deserter. You know, we cannot count with you for the battle. For the battle, we need you at front. And we need you not to worry about the weapons of the enemy. No, don't worry about if they're going to poison you, they're going to do this, they're going to do that. That's not for Christians. That is not a Christian thought. But you see how astute the devil is? The devil sometimes makes the people of God think they are good, because they are preventing themselves from being involved with this and being involved with that. And they made them feel righteous. And that's what the Pharisees were in the Old Testament. I mean, in the beginning of the church, during Jesus' public life. And now, understand this. God is teaching us something very important in these times. We belong to these times. We were created and set apart and predestined to be here today, which means we are responsible for the church and for humanity today. Our responsibility is our faithfulness, our obedience. That's our responsibility. We are vessels of clay that carry the treasure, as St. Paul calls us. And it's a beautiful image. And if you keep that image clear in your heart, you will know who you are, and you will live up to that reality, because that's what God made us like. He created us like that, and we have to live up to that, not to be afraid, not to be worried about what people are doing and what they are planning against you or against the church or against the people of God, because that is not the concern of a soldier. See, a real warrior is never worried about what the enemy is doing. A real warrior goes after the enemy to annihilate it, to defeat it, and not thinking about how powerful it is, what is planning against me, what he is conspiring against me. A real warrior will never worry about that. If you are a real warrior, you go to the front lines and you know you are protected. God is with you. See, read the books of the Maccabees and see warriors. See people that fought with courageousness, brave soldiers, and see the beginning of the church, the apostles, all martyrs. You know, they went to the canyon of the enemy and ran to it and praised God. See St. Ignatius of Antioch running towards the lions at the Roman Colosseum and singing psalms. And he went there and was devoured by the beast. And that's an example of who we are. Not being afraid of the teeth of the lions, not being afraid of the emperor and what he's planning against Christianity, the emperors of today. No, we are not to be worried about any forces of the earth, any earthly forces, any worldly forces, any evil forces, any satanic forces. No, because we have the power. We are the people of God. And afraid of dying? Oh, you think St. Paul and St. Peter were afraid of dying? No, they were not afraid of dying, and we should not be afraid of dying. Why are you concerned about what can happen to you, what they can do to you? Because you are afraid of dying. That means you are not a real Christian. A real Christian is never afraid of dying. And because the moment you are afraid of dying, of being poisoned, or being marked by the beast, or who knows what, you are just a coward. You're just not living up to being a warrior. Warriors don't worry about that. And it's important that we have that clear, because we have too many weak Catholics today. They are, oh, it's so shameful, you know, and the more comfortable they are, you see, the more materialistic they live in their societies, the weaker they are.